everyone. Welcome to the Lawyer Lifter podcast, or Mel's Minutes, where I talk about lifting, life, and business. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Lawyer Lifter podcast, and it is the continuation of the Shulman versus Todd Kaplan et al. Trial, which, as I sit here today, is still ongoing. But we're going back in time to October, beginning of October, and just sort of recreating that process for you. And with any trial, it starts with the jury. And we always knew this. I mean, the client had paid for a mock jury, and actually there are companies out there that simulate the jury that you would essentially have going to trial. And it costs, I don't want to say, probably $30,000 to $40,000 to put on an exercise of that magnitude, because companies like the one that our client utilized, they go to your demographic. For us, we were going to be in Van Nuys Superior Court, and they did 3 juries comprised of, what was it, like 9 people. So 3 groups, 9 people. And we put out, this was before the actual trial, but I'm kind of going through it because typically cases of this magnitude, as I said, the price tag on this particular case was $165 million, demand that the trial team do as much as possible to increase odds of knowing what you're going to get into. It's very similar to knowing how the fight's going to be, or how your opponent's going to be, or what the stats are going to shake out that day. And so everybody puts emphasis on the jury, because at the end of the day, the jury decides everything. And you want to get into these mock trials, or have a client who has the financial ability to do these types of things to increase your chances of better maneuvering the day of picking your actual jury. And so we engaged in that exercise. And historically, a jury pool from Van Nuys is, I would say, over 50% Hispanic and blue collar. They are generally, I think, educated up to certifications, not necessarily in possession of an associate's. And so liberal as well. And these are statistics that we learned and that we kept in mind during voir dire, which is the process of jury selection. And a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows, I don't think actually really touch on that process. It's hard to touch on that process without making it super sexy. And I think the reason why like TV shows and movies go into the jury selection process in a sort of insidious way is because there are issues with like jury tampering or like influence, which in real life, like, you absolutely cannot do. So otherwise, the selection of a jury is just so random. I think last episode we left off with the process where everybody dreads getting that little postcard in the mail that says like jury duty. And when you get that, you're selected, and you with a bunch of like maybe 100 to 200 people, and you're funneled into various courthouses, or sorry, departments within the courthouse. And from there, a judge weeds you out based upon your answers to questions that are just basically a hard kick this person out because you're just absolutely biased, or you have some kind of other conflict, whether that's maybe you're a caregiver, maybe you have a prepaid vacation, or just you're sick, something like that. That gets you automatically kicked out of a potential jury sitting in the box. And then the next round of questioning would be sort of like a chess game between plaintiff and defendant. For us, we got 6 strikeouts. So imagine a courtroom. We had the opportunity, as I mentioned, to hand out 200 questionnaires, which were all the 200 people that were potentially going to sit in the courtroom. And it was to understand who these people were. And so opposing counsel and our team put together about, I would say, like 5 or 6 questions related to the subject matter of the case, ranging from, I think it was, have you ever been a victim, or someone close to you has ever been the victim of a breach of contract or a business dispute that went awry. And then the other pretty big one was elder abuse. And we learned through these questionnaires ahead of time their answers, and then also their education level, and I think also what their employment history. And from there, each counsel was armed already with, who the person's name and all of these stats about them. So as I mentioned, each team has 6 strikeouts, where you can just dismiss a person without having to give a reason, but you only get 6. And so the name of the game is to try and force the other side to use all of their strikeouts so that you can ultimately get the best selection of those 12 that will ultimately decide the fate of the entire case. And as Ariana and I discussed last episode, you begin to care so much about strangers. And I think that process was just eye-opening as to, wow, like, does that system actually work? And how can you get these people to really hear you? And you consider how you look, how your team looks, like your body language, your mannerisms. Ariana, like, what did you think of, I would say, day 1 of jury selection?
So day 1 was obviously our first day. So going into it, you kind of have this idea in the head of the perfect person. You have like, okay, I really want, let's say for an example, a homemaker. We on our side didn't want a homemaker, but we knew the other side would probably not dismiss a homemaker. So you're going into it and you want to look at all these people, look how they're dressed, look if they're anxious to get out of there, look if someone's texting on their phone. In the audience where I was just observing this full courtroom, because in our case we had to have a 3-week timestamp basically. So we had jurors that were already cleared for the time, and you can see who's like, oh, this person's probably going to lie and say they got to get out for any reason. You're already observing these people day 1. And then the 3rd day or the 2nd day when they come back, you're like, okay, you look a little different today. You look calmer. You look like you might actually want to be here. And then you read also their questionnaires and you're like, yep, this is mine. Like, I'm taking this one. And you, from the mock trial, which really helped us out, they helped us craft like the perfect person and the perfect understanding of, okay, this is who I want on my jury and my panel. And it honestly moves very, very fast. When you're sitting there on the final day, and the opposing counsel is thanking and excusing all these people, you're like, oh, who did they just excuse? What number was that? It's super hard to hear these people also because they're uncomfortable. They're not in a position that they want to be in. So you're really trying to just stay focused on the final plan.
Yeah. I would also say that when the judge does his voir dire, and then, as I mentioned, voir dire is French for speaking the truth. And the judge, as I said, just goes through and dismisses and whatever, the category that the judge has ascertained this person needs to go. Then he turns it over to plaintiff's counsel. And because plaintiff has the burden of proof, they go first. With plaintiff going first, I will say that under my belt, I am proud to have that ability to just speak. Like, I really don't care. Like, I can speak. But I have never felt the fear of God than when we did the first day of jury selection and the judge handed it over for us to ask questions. And guess what? Like, you can't ask questions like, hey, are you going to be like really biased against my client? Like, you can't ask things that are completely obvious. Like, do you think my client is a douchebag? Like, you can't. Like, you have to ask it. And there's an art to asking. Like, you ask a general question to everybody, and for them to, and also you're trying to break the ice with the jury. This is the first time these people see you and see your clients. And I didn't think this entire jury situation was real until that day. And as I mentioned, there's like really in my life, I hadn't ever been intimidated or nervous to speak in front of people until that day. And so, as I said, you're trying to find out who these people are and how they're going to be swayed or not swayed by asking questions like, do you watch the news? Do you watch Netflix? Like, things of that nature. And it's all just a very clever, very chess-like way, again, to weed out who you want and who you don't want. And to fake out the other side, to see, to like let them see that maybe, they want this person, but, or pretend that you want that person. So that was jury selection, and it does go incredibly fast. In the time estimate for the trial, I would say we finalized the jury day 2. Or what was it, day 2 or 3?
So because we had such a large group of I want to call them candidates, but a jury pool. So it was a 2-day process. 3 days. The second day, they actually had to pull from a Chatsworth courthouse, I think.
Yeah.
Which was a completely different demographic. And so we had people from the Van Nuys area and Chatsworth. And then day 3 we went into, and that's kind of when you get to question them and do your actual voir dire.
Yeah. And Chatsworth, like, you're probably going to say the same thing I said when the judge said, oh, we ran out. We're pulling from Chatsworth. And I was like, where the fuck is Chatsworth? And the reason why, no disrespect, but the reason why I was nervous and legal teams were nervous, I would say even the plaintiffs, is because you then deal with a statistically just less educated pool. And so the things that we were, both sides, trying to take the most complicated shit to make it digestible, it's different, right? Like the thing that's why I stay away from legal shows, is because they always like to show like criminal, right? And it's not that hard. Like you kill someone or you don't, right? Like that's an easy concept, okay? But like when you come into my arena, then I'm gonna say, well, did they break a contract or no? Well, what the fuck is a contract? What the fuck does it mean to break it? And what is damages? And what is the like? Then I'm having to really, really try and speak a language so that people who have zero idea of anything I'm talking about can understand and make the best decision possible to bring justice. And that's less sexy, way more difficult than, if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. So I can't fucking rhyme my shit. Like I can't do it. So but let me tell you, Ariana said, all right, day 3, we, pick the jury. But let me tell you, let's go back even a week, right? Like there was so much drama in the house, real world, without the sex and without the pretty people. But there was, and there were times where I couldn't even understand, oh, fuck, Mel, why did you do this? Number one, was this smart? Were you way too hungry? Did you pick the right team? Are we going to make it? Who am I thinking? David versus Goliath? Here I am against Baker Botts. Baker Botts, maybe I said this last episode. They're 82nd in the world. I'm Uplift. Who the? What the? I am like a boop. Like a crumb of a crumb. And so here are the the rascals that comprise the trial team. There was me. I lead counsel or first chair. And then we have John Kaufman, who sits at my firm as a senior associate, second chair. Then we had third chair, Wayne Quint, and then finally fourth chair, Jake Wang. And the difference here is that the legal team, the lawyers sitting at counsel table, we all actually really work together. But the problem and also the blessing was that we worked, remote. But when you go through hell and back, and when you see the shit that we saw and worked, the crazy hours that we worked, you end up being traumatized and fucked up together. And that has made us closer as an entire legal team. With support staff on trial team, we have Ariana and Angie Conker, as well as William Barnes. And then at home, I had a very skeletal Uplift Law team. And I think that the reason for our greatness as it pertained to making sure things at home were good and also working together is because we actually were a team. And I think that at the end of the day, the David versus Goliath, we put on just a fucking amazing show. We didn't have the endless resources, but we did have, a very amazing team who cared about each other, who knew each other's working styles, and, was able to do the best for our clients. Now, I told you that this was like the real world with, without the sex and the blah, blah, blah. It was because we all had our little quirks that usually get masked via Zoom. And so, for example, one of the biggest things was that we had issues with even the health of trial team. First of all, Jake Wang, who sits as fourth chair, suddenly got COVID, which then just sent waves of panic throughout the firm because I had demanded all of us get tested. And I was like, oh my God, are we all going to just have COVID and not make it? Well, that fucking sucks because we've been preparing for 2 years for this moment. Then we had Wayne Quint, and he will discuss just candidly, and this is important because one of the most amazing things that came out of this trial is that Judge Cotton himself said that Wayne's ability to conduct his portion of the trial remotely would then change the face of how he would utilize technology so that any attorney could do the same thing. And that hits directly home because since I birthed Uplift, I have really believed in efficiency and intimacy through investment in technology and in having relationships with clients and being on the level. So Wayne Quint is a 100% disabled retired vet. And he had constantly said to me, Mel, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to go to trial and be there with you. And I'm like, all right, cool. Let's fucking do this shit. And here's another thing. My team, I told you we're remote. We don't give a shit about boundaries, time, space, whatever. Wayne lives in North Carolina. So his ass got flown to the beautiful Van Nuys. And we had to do everything we could to really understand that disability and extricate out of him the same work that he put forth in my firm in a remote setting. And that was fucking drama and it was drama for him too, because at home, he has his entire family who knows what he needs to be productive, to eat, to sleep, to drink water, to this, like that. And he'll go into more detail, all the gruesome detail. But basically, I had to make an executive decision probably a week into prep, right before jury selection. I had to send the soldier home. I had to fucking put him on a plane and said, dude, you're super unhappy. You're not working the way you work for me. Go home. We'll fucking do the trial remotely. And he was actually afforded that by Judge Cotton when he explained, I'm disabled. When you are disabled, you are endowed with rights. And so he went home and he became third chair all the way from North Carolina. Amazing that he was questioning witnesses through a camera and, supporting us every day, all through the day, all through nights, remotely. So that Wayne Quint, Jake Wang, he hails from Santa Barbara / Burbank, and he was getting over COVID and pulling himself back to life for the sake of trial. Now, John Kaufman, you'll hear from, hails from deep in San Diego. He is just he's a dad. When you think of it like a dad, oh, that's my dad. He's so amazing. He's my second chair. And I think that was one of the greatest, skill sets that I achieve. If you're playing a video game, you're like, oh, Mel, you leveled up. I would say that I leveled up in the sense that everybody was a certain chair and everybody was tasked with certain things because I saw who my people were and what they were skilled at, and they were assigned that shit. Fucking Jake Wang, he is surgical and just fucking dangerous when it comes to research and writing. He was like my, back pocket machete, because he was writing up shit and the other side didn't even know what he was doing. I know that they downplayed him because they saw him as just like this rando attorney sitting next to Mel, but not really saying anything. But they didn't realize like his ass was paying attention and figuring out legal chess pieces to move while the trial was ongoing. John, he is so good with taking something that is complicated, and when given the time, he's able to just break down witnesses in the most effective way. And we'll talk to John Kaufman, dad, soon as well. Now, Wayne's like your friend that is like on all kinds of uppers, but says the most brilliant shit and then just like passes out. That's Wayne. Like, I mean, he can fucking, it's insane. Like, he just goes and then he passes out. So there's like a window of extreme legal intelligence and productivity. But, with all of my boys, as I call them, like, you have to know, what they need to be productive. And that was sort of like, as lead, I'm not just the one who's talking the most. I'm the one who's trying to orchestrate how the fuck to get this team to do the most with their skill set and in the most optimal ways. And support staff, that's exactly what they were doing. They were taking from my cues, like I was deploying them to be like, okay, fucking tell Wayne to eat. Like, literally just fucking tell this man to eat and chill. Tell Jake to, focus on this. Tell John that I'm doing that, and again, we're not even talking about jury selection. We're legit just talking about how is Mel going to take this ragtag team to fucking deal with Goliath. And let me tell you, Baker Botts, super machine, like just Terminator, just like fucking, they all color coordinated their suits. Like they even brought their baby attorneys and who sat in the back, who did the grunt work, right? But like, that's the thing. We don't have grunt workers. We were working extra hard because we're the fucking underdogs. Yeah, we have some resources, but we don't have Baker Botts resources. Nowhere fucking near. So, I mean, we said a bunch of shit. We cried. We basically wanted to kill each other, but we got to it and we fucking did the thing and showed up and picked a jury. And that's where I'm going to leave it for the next episode of Lawyer Lifter Podcast. And that wraps up the Lawyer Lifter Podcast, aka Mel's Minutes. Catch this episode on Apple or Spotify. See you next time.